We're on page 172. Gvulot ha'anava. The limitations of humility. We mentioned earlier that the king, not only does he not deviate from his humility, rather sometimes he must be a little more humble than everybody else. Especially in terms of his relationship to Hashem. He bows more in prayer. He shows more subservience when he speaks with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But now we're going to speak about the flip side of the coin. For a leader to be too humble can cause its own share of problems. Yes, I'm very humble towards Hashem and to show the people that even I, the great king, the great leader, the great president, whatever, insert the title here, needs to be humble towards Hashem, so how much more so you? But there's a flip side of that. And unfortunately we live in a world where we don't truly appreciate what I mean by what happens with the flip side of this. There's an interesting discussion that happened this week on my Facebook feed about Sephardic rabbis wearing Sephardic clothing. And it's an emotionally charged issue, so I'm going to ask forgiveness in advance. The Sephardic community never saw anything intrinsically valuable or holy about the secular culture around them, which they were a part of. What is a Sephardic dress? I don't know. In Yemen, they wore Yemenite clothing. In Morocco, they wore Moroccan clothing. And in Egypt, they wore Egyptian clothing. Kind of like in Poland, they wore Polish clothing. And in Russia, they wore Russian clothing. And in Hungary, they wore Hungarian clothing. And in Spain, we wore Spanish clothing. And in Babylon, we wore Babylonian clothing. Because halakha does not dictate any kind of clothing for a Jewish person. Rather, you dress whatever it is that is meaningful to you, to society. You have to look respectable, and that can mean many things to many different people. But aside from the objective boundaries of tzniut, which are far and few in between, and wearing, perhaps, because we've studied that maybe a kippah not, but a kippah and tzitzit. We've mentioned how both of those are not necessarily part of the original Jewish dress. But there is no significance to the clothing which people wear, aside from one, they feel it to be respectable, two, they like the way they look.
How about the halacha, or maybe just a little that you're not supposed to dress like the non-Jews, imitate their ways? What is that?
Very good. This says in the Torah, "B'chukotehem lo telechu." You shall not walk in the ways of the non-Jews. And the question is, what does that mean? Already, most people read this and come to all kinds of conclusions, but it's not as strict of a rule as you think. It's a biblical prohibition. But Maran, in the Beit Yosef, quotes an opinion of the Mahari Kolon, and essentially, the bottom line is that any custom that non-Jews have, be it clothing, be it actions, be it customs, that they have that has a rational, logical explanation for it, you're allowed to do.
You're allowed?
The reason why we're not allowed to walk in this prohibition, dress the way non-Jews dress, assuming that you live in a place where non-Jews have a certain way to dress, are because we're worried that those customs might have idolatrous backgrounds that they're not familiar with. How many Jews do this? Oh, they knock on wood. You ever seen that? I'm knocking on plastic now, so it's okay. This knock on wood, more likely than not, comes from an old Christian custom. To, when we say we want to bring up merits, so we say, Hashem, remember for us what happened in Har HaMoriah, we accepted the Torah. Remember what Avraham Avinu did for his son, Akedat Yitzchak. So Christians knock on wood to remember the wood of Yeshu that he was crucified on. It's an atonement, a sign of blessing. And how that became a Jewish thing, I have no idea. But more likely than not, it's prohibited for a Jew to knock on wood.
Also, some people used to knock on idols' heads.
I don't know. If you knock on the idol's head hard enough to break it, then it's okay. But this is the prohibition, at least, and there are some other concerns. There are some concerns that there are things that are dress of non-Jews that we would consider inappropriate on a modesty level. For example, the Shulchan Aruch mentions I believe it's in Yoreh De'ah Kuf Ayin Chet, 178, I think. Don't hold me to the number. Where Maran says the Jews have a custom not to wear red. What do you mean red? Yeah, a little bit of red on your shirt, so that's not what we're talking about. But to wear a red shirt and pants and a hat and a cape, and because the custom of the non-Jewish royalty, the royal color is a velvet red. It's like a blood red. Have you seen this color? Our rabbis considered it not sinful. It was too reminiscent. It was unique only to idol worshipping kings, and they therefore suggested that we stay away from such colors. There is a debate whether that halakha applies today,
Because
because it's not really true anymore. Halaperetz is strict about it, but I can't force somebody halachically to observe this teaching, because it could be that the reasons really have fallen to the wayside. As some would argue, and there was a custom in the early Reform movement, some still today, that rabbis used to wear the same clothing that priests wore, Catholic priests, with a slightly different tweak, so it looked Jewish, and all kinds of, and there are still such synagogues who go to the temple of Reform because they wear such an outfit. Many rabbis felt that was prohibited, because that clothing is not non-Jewish clothing. It's unique to idol-worshipping non-Jews. There's nothing wrong with non-Jews. It's the idol-worshipping segments among them that we don't want. They're not a problem either. We just don't want to act the same way they do. And so, in terms of clothing around us, Jews always adopted the clothing of the people around them. That's why you have so many different kinds of hats in the Ashkenazi community. It has no religious significance. Now, it could be today they'll tell you, oh, there's a Chabad hat, there's a Skaver hat, it's a Satmar hat, it's a Babav hat. And the reason is because they all came from the same place in Europe where they all dressed a certain way. Kind of like in Skaver. They dress with boots the whole year long. It was cold in Square. I don't know where, somewhere in Europe. But I don't know, now you're sitting in New York, it's 109 degrees outside. I'm not sure that there's any significance to wearing boots. Rubber boots, nonetheless. But I'm not making fun. I'm telling you that this clothing has no significance. The long coats, the short coats, the half a coats, they don't mean much. And therefore, if a person feels that, hey, this is what I want to do, it's what I want to dress, yeah, then go for it. If you come with your Mickey Mouse costume, we'd probably say the same thing. But this whole thing has been, so should Sephardic rabbis dress like Sephardic rabbis? I would say the more compelling question is, why do Sephardic rabbis dress like Ashkenazi rabbis? Not if Sephardic rabbis need to dress like Sephardic rabbis. My grandfather didn't care to wear his sheets that he wore. He said didn't have pants. So it was like sheets. He wore all kinds of things you wrap around your body. He didn't care to wear. He came to Israel, saw pants, so that's a much more intelligent invention, and he put on pants. It's not my family custom not to wear pants, you understand? So I told him, sorry, I'm a Yemenite, I can't wear pants. That would be a really silly kind of but people do the same thing. Well, I'm Chabad, my hat has to be this. What do you mean? My grandfather wore all kinds of things I don't wear today, and my grandmother, and who cares? My grandmother came from a culture where she had gold bracelets all the way up her arm, and every time someone in the family got married, she would take one off. Yet they were on her arm, like they couldn't slide off her wrist. They would what do you call it? Weld them on her. It was like a wedding gift. That was her dowry to give to all her children. Nobody in my family has a custom to walk around with gold rings. What's the big deal? So am I breaking an ancient Moroccan custom? No, who cares? You want to wear gold rings? Go. You want to wear gold bracelets? Fine. Yeah.
I've heard from, on the same subject, I've heard that Chabad people, that the bigger your kippah is, the more religious you are. What do you think about that?
The bigger your kippah are, the more religious you are.
The bigger it is, the more religious you are. What do you think?
It means your head's bigger.
Well, why did I tell you this? There is no goal in Judaism to be religious. That's not one of the 613 commandments. And therefore it could be. I don't know how to measure religiosity. And it could be that the people who measure religiosity measure it by kippah sizes. And it sounds to me like it just means you had an extra few cents in your pocket to pay for the bigger size. And that's probably the only significance a bigger kippah has. And I'm not telling you, so now we dress certain ways. Myself, other rabbis, why do you dress a certain way? So the famous story of Mordechai Eliyahu, and he was asked about whether Sephardic rabbis should wear robes and turbans. And his point, and I believe his point is more correct than the people who critique his point. And that is that if I go now to Muncie, which I do almost every summer, I give Torah classes there. And the only reason a person as heretical as me can give Torah classes in Monsey is because I look the part of a rabbi to them. A rabbi has to look a certain way. Is that correct? No, you could be a rabbi with a polo shirt and jeans. There's no dress code for a rabbi. And therefore, I can make a choice. I could dress however, I could wear my robe and turban. You know what I mean? When I go to Monsey, I'll have all the doors closed to the Jewish community that I can still influence. So one day, be as heretical as me, and then believe in the correct approach to Torah.
If you decide to do that at this shul, just make sure I'm walking with you.
Okay, good. and the bottom line, and this is what Rabbi Peretz always told us, is we always, in every war that a person is in, you pick certain battles that you're going to strategically lose in order to win the war. The point is not to win all the battles. Nobody counts points at the end of a war. Okay, Germany got more points than Britain. There we go. It doesn't work like that. You have to strategically lose. When we were taking over the state of Israel, we strategically lost Jerusalem, parts of Tzfat. We had to make those choices. The West Bank, we couldn't take over everything at once. But we won the war. We got a state. That's how that worked out for us. And so sometimes, and you don't have to agree with which battles we choose to lose, but we'll tell you, we choose to lose certain battles because it's not so important. If I have a choice between teaching the philosophy of Chachmei Sfarad, of the sages of Sfarad, to the whole world, and making Judaism a more moderate religion, a more balanced religion, a faith that is more accepting, and in order to do that, I have to put on some stupid Polish hat made out of a beaver. Fine. I'm willing to lose that battle in order to win the war. And currently, I'll tell you, the score is that we're winning. But if it means that I'm going to stand up for my rights, and I'm going to put on my red turban, and I do it here in my Beit Knesset, but I'm not going to go to Monsey like that. And not because, who cares, right? It's true, I could cut out half the Jewish people from my selected audience. But for what purpose? What did you win? By winning that battle, which war did you win? And so this clothing, this attitude, and every place is different. Yeah, I'm resentful when I'm in New York and it's August and somebody wants me to wear a long black coat. So I don't do it. I never take my black coat anywhere. I wear a suit jacket, or nobody even knows I'm a rabbi over there. So I just roll up my sleeves and go to shul, and they anyways discount me as that weird Sparta guy in the back of the shul. So it's okay. Like nobody even asked me, you want aliyah, nobody's gonna eat my food, nobody's inviting me for dinner. It's not like I ever have any problem. Nobody talks to me, so I'm okay in the back with it. It's not like I'm going to introduce myself as, I'm the chief rabbi of Israel and I forgot my jacket at home. Nobody cares. Nobody knows who I am. So I'm okay in that kind of situation. But every person has to think through these things, yeah.
What about like the reverse side of that? Like people that would listen to you if maybe you weren't wearing a suit and jacket and stuff. I guess it just all depends on who you...
It's a very good point. And in fact...
Who your audience is, right?
And in fact, when I got my long coat, you could discuss it later, when it happened and why it happened. And that was one of my biggest concerns, is that people would automatically in a certain category. And I can't help that reaction, but I'll tell you the following. Is fortunately the people on that side of the spectrum are a little more open-minded than the people on the other side of the spectrum. To their benefit, I'm telling you that. And their benefit, they're less judgmental. And about other things, yes, but not about this. And the second is that it's funny, as a rabbi, people are willing to let you dress as, and I'm saying this in parentheses because that's true, as rabbinical as you need. It doesn't really make a difference as long as they know you who you are. So I've never shown up to like a first meeting, but for the most part, people are okay with you dressing like the Pope. As a rabbi, you have leniency to do all kinds of things, and one of them is you can't look too rabbinic as a rabbi for most people. And I'll tell you the truth is, unfortunately, the Kehillat Shaar HaShamayim experience is pretty intense. I mean that fortunately, but unfortunately, what it means is that the people who get scared away by small things generally won't survive anyways in the greater picture of intensity that goes on here. So it could be that it's not a snobbish thing that we do, but it's a certain, like if you walked out because you didn't like that Angel was wearing a t-shirt, then it's probably the wrong community for you. That's probably what's going to happen. And it's true. I could ask everybody to dress a certain way and come to shul, but if I have to take those kind of people into consideration, then I'm already... And it's a double-edged sword, because it could work the other direction too.
Remember that wedding we did last year? It's like it was mostly Israelis for Etty's wedding.
Oh yeah.
And at first, because I was out there wrestling, they saw a rabbi with a long black coat on the foot. I was like, but then they started joining in, and they warmed up, and they were singing arm in arm with you. It's like.
In fact, I once went to do a certain set. I came just like in a normal suit jacket, I said, how come you didn't wear your uniform? It's not a uniform. I couldn't care less either way. But I have a friend, when he moved to Israel, his father told him, you can't even leave a building without your hat and jacket on. It's an embarrassment to me if you leave the building without a hat and jacket on. It's the middle of August in Israel. It's 109 degrees. I don't know how hard it is, like Palm Springs. And they're walking around in a Siberian outfit. And you're sweating, it's hot, and what happens? You sweat and it's hot, and you start to smell, and then you get on a bus, all religious people smell, and that's a whole slew of side effects that go along with it. But on the flip side of this conversation, and this is why it's important, and in order to tell you what I mean, there's a saying in the Talmud, there are two sayings in the Talmud that are derogatory about the rabbis who live outside of Israel, and are complimentary towards the rabbis who live inside of Israel. The first is, and I feel this in my flesh, that when these two boys came from the East Coast, they were here for Shabbat, they're going to be here for the summer. They asked me the difference about being a rabbi in Israel, being a rabbi in America, and I told them exactly this sentence. The Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim shebe'eretz Yisrael, the Torah scholars in the land of Israel, man'imim zeh et zeh b'halacha. They make each other pleasant with their halachot. They complement each other in their halachot. I don't agree with you, but I have another angle that could help you out. It's pleasant. They show pleasantry in halakha. Talmidei Chachamim asher b'Bavel, but the Torah scholars in Bavel, machrivim zeh et zeh b'halakha. They destroy each other in halakha. It becomes a competition, a monopoly. Who's smart? Who's right? Whose approach is correct? And they end up going to war with each other just to destroy the other one.
Whose keep is bigger?
Whose keep is bigger? And exactly this. And then the Gemara tells you, and it could be the other order. I don't remember the order now. Could have been not even the same place, but these two teachings stuck out to me. The Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim shebe'eretz Yisrael, shebe'Bavel, the Torah scholars in Bavel. I don't remember now if it's muflagim or muflaim, b'viddehem. They stick out. Their clothing sticks out. They look like rabbis. They have a certain dress to them. Talmidei Chachamim shebe'eretz Yisrael, and the Torah scholars in Israel, they don't. They just dress however they feel like dressing. And you kind of see that in Israel. You can have in Israel big Rashi Yeshivot, especially from the non-ultra-Orthodox communities, with a short sleeve shirt and sandals, and they're big poskim, big rabbis. But this is different. Every community in its own issues, but it could be that in Israel things would be different. But the time here in America, there's a certain look. But what that tells you is that the rabbis outside of Israel, and it could be because of other clergy that exist outside of Israel, that they are expected to look a certain way, even if the rabbis in Israel laugh at them because of it. But this rabbi is supposed to look like a rabbi. What does that mean? Whatever you want it to mean. But there should be a different kind of code. And this is where Rabbi Yonatan Halevy is going to go with this. You could have a president of the United States that decides that he wants to go to all of his meetings dressed in a bathing suit and a t-shirt, Hawaiian t-shirt. I love the USA. Could be. And he can make such a decision. But something would be lacking about his presentability. He'd be, what, are you going to go meet a president of another country, a prime minister, and that's how you're going to dress? Like that? With the bathing suit? Now he's a president, he can do whatever he wants. Why, and especially in today's world, why does clothing matter so much to you? It used to be that every job description had its own uniform. Doctors had a uniform, nurses had a uniform, postal service had a uniform, firefighters had a uniform, police officers had a uniform. And today they still do, but I don't know if you know that every one of those people had headgear that went along with their uniform too. Yeah. There were nurses' hats and doctors' hats and police officers' hats, and you'll see them in old movies and pictures, and then the world became more casual. That's what they call it. We care less about it. The nurse doesn't have to wear a nurse's hat with a red cross for us to know that she's a nurse. It's enough that she wears her pajama, what do they call it? Scrubs, very good. Scrubs with her name on it, and you already know that she's a nurse. Now, did it change her qualifications as a nurse? Absolutely not. But people used to have a certain pride in the way they dressed. Professions had a certain uniform that went along with it. Even the car mechanics have a uniform. It's a certain pride that exists in a place. And what we've done is we've made everything so casual that we've created also a lot of false equality. People don't know anymore. Now you can walk into a synagogue and you see 30 people with long coats and hats and big beards, and none of them are not rabbis, some of them don't even know how to read Hebrew. What does that mean? Because the costume is much easier to buy than the wisdom that my brother-in-law once went to the Stoliner Rebbe. And he asked him, he said, you know, in the family custom, they wear a shtreimel, a big fur hat. But in the Hasidic custom, they don't have. That Hasidut doesn't have the custom to wear a shtreimel. So what should he do? And the Rebbe told him, why don't you do this? Let's first worry about what is inside of the head before you figure out what goes on top of the head. That's what he told him. So when you work out that you have a head, then we'll figure out which kind of headgear you want to put on top of it. And that's wise advice. Now, he probably wears a shtreimel anyways. But the idea was, there's more to it than just that. The clothing works when it complements something. But if it's just the costume, then it doesn't help anybody. A king, a leader, is demanded to look a certain way. Not because they're supposed to show off, but rather because there's a certain aura of respectability that is supposed to be around them. And that's societal. That changes based on where you are and how you are. In fact, I'm of the feeling that if I were ever to go to the White House and have a meeting in a few years, then I probably wouldn't wear a long coat and a hat. Probably not. Probably the more respectable way to dress in the White House would be with a short suit and a nice tie and a kippah. And I see some people with a shtreimel because you have to know which generation you live in, and which place you live in, and where it is that you go. But okay, each their own. So he says here, Rabbeinu Avraham, "V'asher la'av ha'ava sheben adam lechavero." The two kinds of humility. There's a humility between us and other people, so be humble, and the humility between us and Hashem. So the interpersonal humility, הנה מחייבת לפעמים הנחיצות כמה אנשים לסור ממנה לעתים מזומנות. There are some people, and it mentions here leaders, that sometimes have to deviate from the path of humility between people because that's what their job description requires. If the president wore the same suit that I bought off of Groupon and he's going to meet, I don't know where he's going, some very he's going to Italy, and they tell him, the president doesn't wear an Italian suit custom tailored to him. Now, if you would say, you know, I only wear fine Italian suits, people say you're a very haughty person. But for the president to demand that in order to meet world leaders he has to dress a certain way, we don't really bat an eyelid at that. In fact, that's correct. That's a correct thing to do. Because sometimes you have to deviate from the path of outward humility in order to do the things you need to do as a leader. לסיכומו של דבר, אם to summarize, נאמר, we'll say, כי כל אלה הולכים בדרכי ענווה שאינם נושאים באחריות להנהיג את זולתם, that all those who are not leaders, meaning they're ordinary citizens of the world, חובה עליהם להחזיק בענווה חיצונית לבד מן הפנימית. They have to be particular both in the humility between them and Hashem and between them and other people. So for a normal citizen to insist that he has to wear a $7,000 custom tailored suit is considered arrogance. There's no reason for that. Why? What's the purpose? Who are you trying to show off to? Who are you trying to make feel poor? When I went to yeshiva, one of the first rules they sent out to us was that you couldn't wear clothing that had any brand name logos on them. As a California kid, I didn't even know much about these things, but it seems like in certain societies, you have a crocodile, you got a horse going on, you got a golf club, I don't know, all kinds of different stuff. No, I'm not looking, don't worry. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. And the idea was that you're going to come to yeshiva. What is a yeshiva? You're moving out of your bubble into a whole new world. And there are kids that are going to come from houses that can't afford the shirt with a nice crocodile on it. And they can only afford a shirt with a elf on it. I don't know, whatever other thing is going to be. I don't know how this works. And so how are you going to walk around yeshiva trying to perfect your midot when you're essentially just by wearing that shirt, you're making another person feel poor? And so the rule was, you want to buy a $1,000 shirt? Great, but you can't know from the outside that it's a $1,000 shirt. I find it very valuable to have such a... Now people say, when I spoke about this once to a group of businessmen, they got very upset. Very upset. What do you mean? We have money. Why can't we dress nice? So you missed the point. The point is that you can dress however you want. But you have to ask yourself, am I dressing this way because it's comfortable for me, because I like how it feels, or because I like how it makes other people feel? I like how it makes people turn their heads in my nice car. It's a very scary thing buying a car. I'm right now looking for another car. It's a very terribly dangerous thing. My parents once told me that the biggest ayin hara a person can have is their car. Think about it. Why does somebody need and if I'm offending anybody here, Just tell me who you are so I can hit you up for more membership. Why does anybody need shiny yellow Lamborghini with doors that go up to heaven? Why? For what purpose? Where do you need to go with it? But it goes, I don't know, it goes 160 miles an hour in 3 seconds. Where are you allowed to drive 160 miles an hour?
You're not.
Where? So you're going to be stuck behind me in my 1991 hand-me-down car, 65 miles an hour, and you're not going to be able to pass me anyways. So for what purpose do you need this car? Now if you tell me it's because, they last for a very long time. These people don't keep cars for more than a year or two. Sometimes they even have 5 cars. They switch between each other. So for what purpose do you have this car? I know I have this car because you ever roll into valet parking at the restaurant. Not a kosher restaurant. I've never been a kosher restaurant valet parking. You go into a wedding and you park your car in front of the shul and you beep beep and the whole world sees you. That's the only reason you paid this much money for a car. Let's call a spade a spade. Now so they got mad at me. What do you mean? So I can't drive a nice car? I said, I'm not telling you what you can and cannot do. Clearly, you don't listen to me anyways. But if you think about the things that you do, and you ask, what's the motivation for doing this? I have 10 kids, so I need a 5-bedroom house. Makes sense. I got 2 per bedroom. But I live alone with my wife, and we're 93 years old and can't walk up the stairs, and I buy a 4-floor mansion with 23 bedrooms. What's the point? Do you let people come? You know how many people I know that have huge houses? Now, for all the people that I know, like this, there are people that host people their whole life. That when hey yo, do you have a place for Shabbat? They start like this. You have so many bedrooms in your house, you wouldn't even realize if I put someone in one of them.
You won't be able to find them.
Instead, what happens? They end up sleeping on my couch in the middle of my house. I can't even go in the middle of the night to get a cup of water because there's some half-dressed person on my couch. That's how why? Because sometimes it's the way the world works. But I've been to places, and I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and there are people who own houses. I was in New York for my wedding. There are people who own houses. They buy 2 houses next door to each other.
Oh, wow.
And they have one house they don't rent to anybody. There's a listing in New York called a house in Gemach. They have a few of them. So let's say I came to New York for my wedding. I'm going to be there for a week before the wedding and 3 days afterwards for Shever B'chol. And then my parents are going to be joining us, and we need to be walking distance to a shul, so I can't stay in some hotel somewhere. You call a phone number, and they'll tell you, if you call ahead enough in time in advance, they'll say, oh, we have a 4-bedroom house for you. The owner bought it for his kids when they come to visit him in the summer, but right now they're not here. And it's free. You can go stay there. Wow. If you like, you can give a donation afterwards for the house cleaning, for the center. It doesn't go to the landowner. It goes to the company. Imagine a management company that manages free houses. And they're a non-profit. They take donations to upkeep these houses. And we got there. I was there first before my parents came. And the owner came from his unit. It was like a townhouse. So 2 houses stuck together. He came to ask us if we need a hot water urn, if we need blankets, if we need pillows. They have cleaning service that comes there. My in-laws, when they come from New York to the summer, where do they stay? For a whole month they stay in such a place. There's no room by any of the kids to stay in an apartment. For free. What did they ask you? For free. You give people give donations afterwards. My parents, my in-laws, they all give donations here. But you have that opportunity. So I have a situation where people buy extra houses to host people, and then people who have extra bedrooms who can't lend them out. It's almost an ironic situation of which, Baruch Hashem, if we guide people in the right direction, this is the right. How do I get the houses? So if you're telling me you buy a big house because you want to host the whole world there, I should get a big. Hashem should give you a blessing to get a bigger house. But if you got the whole big house, or just to show off to your next door neighbor, look how much money I can invest in my house, and to decorate the fences, and to put nice rows of flowers that nobody's allowed to walk on. You ever been to somebody's house where they have very fancy Italian couches that you're not allowed to sit on? I was once in a house, you can't sit over there, that's too expensive of a couch.
Take your shoes off when you walk in.
Or they're covered in
That's
plastic.
a very interesting. They're covered in plastic, worse. That's the Jewish thing, they're covered in plastic. They tell you can't sit. So you bought a couch, so we could all walk in the house and say, oh, that's the $30,000 couch from Italy that we're not allowed to sit on. What's the point? You don't even get any pleasure out of this couch.
It's a museum.
Or you sit on top of the plastic.
People spend thousands of dollars for fine oak tables, whatever it is, and they spend the whole life covered in a tablecloth anyways because you don't want it to get scratched. So tell me, if you had folding tables and cover them with a table, anyone would know the difference? So why'd you spend so much money? Who are you trying to impress? Now what's worse are not the people who have that are trying to impress. It's the people who borrow money to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't know. Those are the worst. And we all fall into that trap. Someone made a wedding, now I have to make a wedding, but I can't afford to make one, but I have to make it nice for the last person because they're going to talk about me at my wedding. When I made Avinoam's brit, I had to call my wife down and I said, tell me how many people that are coming are going to pay you to come here. They're buying tickets to come to the brit. No, you can afford X, that's the brit we're going to make. And guess what? It's going to be nice because all the beautiful people in the world that we like are going to be there. That's all that matters. So guess what? If I asked you what the menu of the brit was, you remember? I remember because I stayed up all night making the food. Because I couldn't afford a caterer. But if I asked you what you ate, which salad we had and which vinegar dressing my wife put on it, because she spent 3 hours thinking about that.
You just remember the muscle tub?
Yeah, you don't remember. You don't remember anything. You might remember a little of singing the brit or the dancing. You don't remember anything. So why do you spend so much time on it? You're wasting your own money, your own life. But here, Rabbeinu Avraham is saying that's for a regular human being. There are people that have to step out of this game, or step into this game of impressing other people. If the White House looked like my house did, you can never bring a state leader there. So you have to have a White House that is impressive. That there's a helicopter landing in the front lawn and Secret Service. It has to look impressive. Because the glory of this country rests, fortunately and unfortunately, in everything that goes on around the people who lead this country. When you catch a politician stealing and lying and cheating, it's not, a lot of people steal, lie, and cheat. We don't make such a big deal about it. You know why they don't make the front page of the newspaper? Because the whole glory of this country wasn't resting on their shoulders. When the chief rabbi of Israel goes to prison for stealing money, a lot of people go to prison for stealing money. They don't make the front page of the newspaper because people expected the rabbinate to be represented in this person. And they defiled that trust. They betrayed people. And so a leader has to sometimes do things that we're not allowed to do in order to stick out, because that's part of the job description. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow, what it means to dress and how you're able to maintain external pride while internally remaining humble. That's a hard thing to do. It's like when it says in Egypt, the Midrash says that when the hail fell on the Egyptians, what was inside of the hail? According to the Midrash, fire. There was fire on the inside and hail on the outside. So fire melts hail. But sometimes you have to know how to have fire on the inside and hail on the outside, and not to get those two things confused with each other. How do you do it? So tomorrow we're going to have that conversation, but it's important to know how to do that.
Next week.
There's no call.
But you could have it.
Should make call Wednesday nights, huh? Okay, so next week. Well, next week with Al Hashem, we're going to talk about it.